Dr. Maya Benson, a successful black surgeon, was supposed to have a relaxing flight until a flight attendant challenged her right to be there. Humiliation, doubt, public scrutiny. But what was meant to shame Maya backfired instantly, because 30 minutes later, that flight attendant got fired. What happened next? A viral moment, corporate consequences, and a powerful lesson in justice. Stay tuned, because this isn't just a story. It's a wake-up call. Before we continue, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so the community can grow, and we can bring you more stories like this. Now, let's get into it. It started with a single glance. A look that lasted a second too long. Dr. Maya Benson adjusted her blazer as she stepped into the first-class cabin of Flight 328, en route from New York to Los Angeles. She had worked hard for this moment. Years of late nights, endless studying, and sacrifices to become one of the country's most sought-after cardiothoracic surgeons. A much-needed getaway was well-deserved, but the moment she sank into the plush seat, she felt it, that lingering gaze. A blonde flight attendant, name tag reading Heather, stood frozen near the entrance, eyes narrowed slightly as she took in Maya's presence. Maya had seen this look before, skepticism wrapped in politeness. Heather's lips curved into a strained smile. "Ma'am, are you sure you're in the right seat?" Maya blinked. "Excuse me?" Heather took a step closer, lowering her voice as if to keep the other first-class passengers from overhearing. "I mean, this is first class." Maya inhaled slowly. She had no patience for this, not today. "Yes, I know. That's why my ticket says Seat 3A. She pulled the boarding pass from her handbag and held it up. Heather's smile faltered. "Oh. Well, sometimes mistakes happen. Would you like me to check it for you?" Maya arched a brow. "I'm pretty sure I can read." A few passengers had begun to notice the exchange. A businessman in the row ahead glanced back while an older couple whispered to each other. Heather hesitated before forcing a chuckle. "Of course, I didn't mean anything by it. We just don't get many mix-ups in first class." Maya's jaw clenched. Mix-ups. She had flown first class countless times. Conferences, medical summits, personal vacations. Never once had she been questioned. But today, she was a black woman sitting in first class, and apparently, that was cause for concern. Heather cleared her throat. "Well, if you need anything, just let me know." Then, without waiting for a response, she spun on her heels and strutted away. Maya exhaled, shaking her head. Here we go again. 10 minutes later, passengers were still settling in when Heather returned, this time with another flight attendant, a taller brunette named Jessica. They stopped right in front of Maya's seat. Heather leaned in. "Dr. Benson, would you mind coming with us for a moment?" Maya's eyes narrowed. "Why?" Jessica hesitated, shooting Heather a warning glance. "It's just a quick verification." Maya didn't budge. "Verification of what? I've already shown my ticket." Heather's smile was back, this time even thinner. "Well, a passenger mentioned that they saw you sitting in first class and we just need to double-check everything." Maya scoffed. "A passenger reported me?" Jessica sighed. "It's just protocol." Maya looked around. Eyes were on her now. Watching, judging. And that's when she decided. She wasn't going anywhere. Maya folded her arms, settling deeper into her seat. "I'm not going anywhere." Heather's smile wavered. "Dr. Benson, we're just trying to clear up a small misunderstanding." Maya tilted her head. "A misunderstanding that only involves me?" Jessica shifted uncomfortably, clearly realizing this wasn't going to be as simple as they thought. "Dr. Benson, please." "No," Maya cut in sharply. "I showed my ticket. I'm sitting in my assigned seat. You're questioning me for what reason?" Heather's lips parted, but she had no real answer. "Unless—" Maya's voice dropped, Her eyes locked onto Heather. "You're accusing me of something." Heather blinked. No, of course not. It's just that sometimes, people—" Maya leaned forward. "People what?" Heather hesitated. Jessica let out a soft breath, looking at Heather as if to say, "Fix this. Now." But it was too late. First-class passengers were watching. The businessman in front of Maya turned in his seat, frowning. The older couple across the aisle was whispering again. But now their expressions were different. This wasn't just a casual misunderstanding anymore. It was becoming a scene. Jessica finally spoke up, her voice lower, more measured. "Dr. Benson, you're right. You've already shown your ticket, and we don't want to inconvenience you any further." She shot Heather a pointed look. "We apologize for the confusion." Heather's jaw tightened. She clearly wasn't happy about backing down. Maya let the silence stretch between them before speaking. "I'd like a glass of champagne." Jessica nodded quickly. "Of course, I'll have that right out for you." Heather, however, lingered for a second longer, like she wanted to say something else, but instead she spun on her heel and stormed toward the front of the cabin. Maya exhaled slowly, adjusting her bracelet. This wasn't over. She could feel it. 15 minutes later, Maya was halfway through her champagne when she heard it. Raised voices, urgent whispers, the kind of hushed panic that meant trouble. She looked up just in time to see a man in a suit, one of the flight supervisors, storming toward first class. His expression? Pure fury. Heather was right behind him, her face pale, her hands clenched into fists. Maya set down her glass. What now? The supervisor, a middle-aged black man with sharp eyes, stopped in front of Maya's seat. "Dr. Benson," he said smoothly, his voice tight with barely concealed anger. "I want to personally apologize for what just happened." Maya arched a brow. "Oh?" Heather flinched. The supervisor turned his gaze on her, cold and sharp. "Because in about 5 minutes, Heather will no longer be working for this airline." Maya's eyes widened slightly. Now this was interesting. Heather's face turned ghostly pale. What? The supervisor didn't even spare her a glance as he turned his full attention to Maya. "Dr. Benson, I'm deeply sorry for the way you were treated. This is unacceptable, and I assure you it does not reflect our airline's values." Yes. Heather's hands trembled. But I was just following protocol." The supervisor's jaw tightened. "Oh, really?" He pulled a tablet from his side and tapped the screen. Then, with a sharp nod, he turned it around, showing a security feed of the flight attendants area. Maya leaned forward slightly, and there it was. Heather, standing with 2 other attendants, rolling her eyes and sneering. "She doesn't look like first class," Heather was saying in the footage. "She probably snuck in or got a free upgrade. You know how they are." A collective gasp rippled through the cabin. Maya's stomach clenched. So that's what this was. The video continued, showing Heather smirking as she whispered to Jessica, "I bet if we push a little she'll get nervous and leave on her own." The footage cut out. Silence filled the space. Jessica, standing off to the side, had her head down, face bright red. Heather's lips parted, but no words came. She had no excuse. The supervisor took a step closer, voice cold. "So let me get this straight, Heather. You decided, based on nothing but your own bias, that Dr. Benson didn't belong here? You even encouraged another flight attendant to intimidate a paying passenger?" Heather opened her mouth, then closed it. The supervisor shook his head. "You don't get to wear this uniform anymore." Heather's breath hitched. "Wait. No. You're done." His voice was final. "When we land, security will escort you off the premises." Heather's entire body stiffened. She turned almost frantically toward Jessica. "Say something." Jessica swallowed hard. "Heather, you did say those things." A choked sound left Heather's throat. I didn't mean it like that. I was just... The supervisor lifted a hand, cutting her off. You meant it exactly how you said it. Maya stayed silent, watching. This was justice in real time. Heather turned to Maya now, desperation in her eyes. Dr. Benson, Maya raised a hand. Don't. Heather's mouth snapped shut. Because now she knew. There was no talking her way out of this. No more excuses. No more power. Just the cold, hard truth. And consequences. Heather stood frozen, her face a mask of shock and panic. She glanced around desperately, searching for sympathy. None came. The businessman in front of Maya shook his head in disgust. The older couple across the aisle whispered again, this time not about Maya, but about Heather. Heather took a shaky breath. Please, I can't lose this job. The supervisor didn't flinch. You should have thought about that before targeting a passenger. Heather's eyes darted back to Maya, filled with the kind of desperation that only appeared when consequences became real. Dr. Benson, I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. Maya tilted her head slightly. You mean the mistake of getting caught? Heather flinched. A sharp voice crackled through the intercom. Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff. The supervisor straightened. Heather, go to the back of the plane. You are relieved of duty for the remainder of this flight. Heather's breathing turned shallow. But that wasn't a request. His voice left no room for argument. Jessica, looking pale but resigned, gently took Heather's arm. Come on. For a moment it seemed like Heather might fight back, but then her shoulders sagged. She gave Maya one last, unreadable look, then turned and walked away. Maya exhaled. The weight in her chest loosened, but not completely. The supervisor adjusted his uniform and turned back to her. Dr. Benson, if there's anything we can do to make this right. Maya studied him. He looked sincere, but she'd been in this position before. Apologies, promises, and then nothing changed. She gave a small, tight smile. Just get me to Los Angeles without any more interruptions. The supervisor nodded. Understood. Jessica returned a minute later with another glass of champagne. This time, she didn't hesitate or question whether Maya deserved it. 30 minutes later, the flight was smooth. Quiet. Maya let her body relax into the seat, letting the hum of the engines wash over her. She sipped her champagne slowly, feeling the weight of what had just happened settle in. Then, her phone buzzed. A text from her assistant. Doctor? Benson, you're trending on Twitter. Did something happen on your flight? Maya's brow furrowed. She opened the app, and there it was. Someone had recorded everything. A viral tweet. A flight attendant just harassed a black woman in first class, tried to make her prove she belonged. Guess what? The woman's a doctor, and the flight attendant? Fired. Asikuja justice served. Maya scrolled. Comments poured in. Good. Tired of this nonsense happening. Why do people still act like this in 2025? She didn't expect karma to hit that fast. Maya smirked. Heather wanted her to feel out of place. Instead, she just became a lesson. Maya stared at her phone, watching the comments flood in. The video had already been shared thousands of times. People were talking. She exhaled. This wasn't the first time she had faced this kind of treatment, but something about this moment, this very public moment, felt different. A notification popped up. Air Lux official has issued a statement. Maya clicked. The airline had responded fast. We are aware of the incident involving a flight attendant's inappropriate behavior on Flight 328. The employee has been terminated, and we are reaching out to Dr. Benson directly to offer our deepest apologies. We do not tolerate discrimination in any form. Maya lifted a brow. Terminated. Not just disciplined, not just retrained. fired. A small part of her was surprised. Most corporations tried to smooth things over, make it disappear. But this was accountability. A new text appeared. Unknown number. Dr. Benson, this is Angela Reese, VP of Customer Relations at Air Lux. I'd love to personally apologize and discuss how we can make this right. Let me know when you're available. Maya stared at the message for a moment. They were taking this seriously. She locked her phone and took another sip of champagne. The turbulence of the past hour was finally settling. 1 hour later, landing in Los Angeles. As the plane taxied to the gate, Maya grabbed her handbag and stood, rolling her shoulders. She was more than ready to get off this flight. But as she turned toward the exit, a quiet voice stopped her. "Doctor? Benson?" Maya glanced back. Jessica. The young flight attendant looked hesitant, clutching a folded napkin in her hand. Maya arched a brow. "Yes?" Jessica swallowed, then held out the napkin. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I should have spoken up sooner." Maya took the napkin, unfolding it. A handwritten note. "I let fear keep me silent today. That won't happen again. I'm sorry." Maya studied Jessica for a long moment. The woman looked sincere and young. "You have a choice, Jessica," Maya said quietly. "When you see something wrong, you either speak up or become part of the problem." Jessica nodded quickly, her face red. "I know. I won't let it happen again." Maya gave a small nod, then turned and stepped off the plane. Outside the terminal, as she walked through the airport, her phone buzzed again. A news notification. "Breaking. Air Lux passenger exposes racist flight attendant. Company responds within hours." Maya smirked. Heather thought she had the power, but in the end, she lost everything. And Maya, she was just getting started. Maya stepped outside into the warm Los Angeles air, the buzz of the airport behind her. She slid her sunglasses on and took a slow breath. It should have been over. But the second she unlocked her phone, she realized this was far from over. Her notifications were out of control. Text messages, missed calls, emails. Another news headline, "Doctor wrongfully targeted on flight. Her response leaves airline scrambling." Maya huffed a quiet laugh. "Scrambling, huh?" She clicked on the article. It detailed everything. The viral video, the airline's swift response, and even Heather's firing. But what caught Maya's attention was the final paragraph. While Air Lux Airlines has apologized publicly, many are asking, how often does this happen to passengers who don't have a platform? And what real changes will the airline make to prevent this in the future? Maya's lips pressed into a thin line. That was the real question, wasn't it? This time it was her. A black woman with a respected career, a following, and receipts. But what about everyone else? 15 minutes later. Inside her car. Maya sat behind the wheel, her hands resting on the steering wheel as she stared at her phone. The message from Angela Reese, VP of Customer Relations, was still there. "I'd love to personally apologize and discuss how we can make this right." Maya tapped her fingers against the leather. She didn't need an apology. She needed something bigger. Before she could overthink it, she typed back, "I'll talk. But I'm not interested in apologies. I'm interested in action." Seconds later, 3 dots appeared. "Understood. Let's set up a meeting. Name the time and place." Maya smirked. 3 days later, Air Lux headquarters. The conference room was sleek, modern, and filled with executives who looked nervous as hell. Angela Reese, an older black woman in a tailored gray suit, sat at the head of the table, hands clasped. She was composed but focused. Heather, of course, was nowhere to be seen. Maya leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "Let's cut the corporate nonsense. What are you actually doing to fix this?" Angela nodded, seemingly expecting this. We're launching a full-scale review of our staff training, and not just surface-level diversity training, real, mandatory education on racial bias, profiling, and ethical conduct. Maya raised an eyebrow. And, Angela continued, we're also implementing a new accountability system. Any employee caught engaging in discriminatory behavior won't just be retrained. They'll be removed. Maya glanced around the table. And this isn't just PR? Angela's eyes held steady. This is change. Maya studied her for a moment, then gave a slow nod. Heather lost her job that day. But Maya, she'd just changed the game. The silence in the conference room stretched, thick with unspoken tension. Maya tapped her nails against the table. All right, that's a start. Angela Reese nodded. We know words aren't enough. That's why we want you involved, Doctor. Benson. She leaned forward, lacing her fingers together. Fine, but on my terms. Angela's lips twitched, Maya's brow lifted. Involved? How? Angela exchanged a glance with another executive, a middle-aged man who had barely spoken since the meeting began. He cleared his throat. We'd like you to consult with us to help shape these new policies. Your experience, both as a high-profile professional and as someone directly affected, makes your voice invaluable. Maya sat back. She hadn't expected that. A viral moment like this usually ended with a company throwing out a generic apology and hoping it all blew over. But this was different. She studied Angela carefully. You want me to work with you? The same airline that let their staff harass me in front of an entire cabin? Angela didn't flinch. I want you to make sure it never happens again. The room was quiet. The executives waited, some shifting uncomfortably, others nodding slightly as if they knew this was their best shot at making things right. Maya exhaled slowly. The easy thing to do would be to walk away. Let them fix their own mess. But she thought about all the people who didn't have her platform. The ones who got humiliated in silence, no cameras recording, no executives scrambling to do damage control in what might have been the faintest hint of a smile. We wouldn't expect anything less. 1 week later, national news. Maya sat in the back seat of her car, scrolling through yet another article. Airlux Airlines announces new anti-discrimination initiative with help from viral passenger. Her phone buzzed. A message from her mentor, Dr. Elaine Foster. Making history again, I see. Proud of you. Maya smiled. She wasn't sure what would come of this partnership. Maybe it was just corporate cleanup, a way to control the narrative. But if there was even a chance, a real chance that she could force real change, then it was worth it. She glanced at her watch. Time for her first official meeting with the airline's policy board. As she stepped out of the car, a reporter nearby caught sight of her. Dr. Benson, he called, microphone in hand. Any comment on how it feels to turn a bad situation into something bigger? Maya adjusted her bag, slipping on her sunglasses. She met the reporter's gaze and smirked. It feels like first class. Then she walked inside. Power is perception. And sometimes people think they can strip you of it, until they realize you were never powerless to begin with. Dr. Benson walked onto that flight just wanting peace. Instead, she was tested, humiliated, and judged. But instead of shrinking, she stood her ground. And in the end, the same system that tried to break her had to bow down and make things right. So remember this. Never let anyone make you feel like you don't belong. You earned your seat. You deserve your space. And no one can take that from you. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notification to be the first to know when interesting and lesson-packed stories like this one drop.